This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, good day to you, everyone. My name is Emily Roman, and I am the Transition Support Team Manager here at the Alamo Area Council of Governments in the IDD Services Department. As you all may well know, there are people in situations where it's easy to communicate and other times when it's challenging to communicate, especially in the area of advocacy. Therefore, I wanted to run by a few tips to help uh, uh, consider when it comes to the area of communication. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and run through those for you. So can you tell me why I use this oxygen mask safety picture to explain the usefulness of healthy boundaries in advocating for yourself and others? When advocating for others, what does it look like to put your own oxygen mask on first? That's something to think about. It involves doing the best you can with what resources you have and being okay with that. As such, we can define our boundaries by clearly uh, knowing what is acceptable for you and what is not. For instance, is it okay for people to call you names while you're trying to advocate? Is it okay for them to shut you down? Is it acceptable for someone to ask something of you that you can't provide or to pass off responsibility? Those things may or may not be acceptable to you, some of those. It is helpful to decide ahead of time what is acceptable and not acceptable so that you can prepare when you're getting ready to advocate. Excuse me. In addition, part of setting healthy boundaries involves communicating them to those that you would like to follow them. Expectations can lead to hardships when they are not communicated. Finally, you can maintain your healthy boundaries by honoring and enforcing them. Uh, this enforcement can be implemented by declining unreasonable requests, suggesting alternative solutions, and having honest, uncomfortable conversations. And that's per the Live Well Monthly handout, which I will provide to you. So when it comes to communication in general, there are three forms of communication: passive, aggressive, and assertive communication. Everyone has the capacity to use all three types of passive, aggressive, and assertive communication, depending on the relationship that they have with the person that they are speaking with, and of course, personalities play into that as well. Passive communication involves prioritizing the needs of others above your own needs. Aggressive communication is the opposite, which aims to elevate one's own needs above the needs of others. Assertive communication demonstrates a healthy balance between passive and aggressive communication. Developing healthy assertive communication does not always come naturally, of course. Therefore, it takes practice to develop, and you're not going to do it perfectly, but it's worth trying. One way to practice healthy assertive communication is to think of an instance in the past where you would have liked to communicate more effectively. I think we can all think of one of those. Um, so for instance, in this form from Therapist Aid that I've copied and pasted for you on the screen, the basic thought in the first row is that I am not worthy. Sometimes when we advocate, we can get so tired of rejection that it can, you just kind of want to give up sometimes and just, not try. The opposite end of that is you are not worthy, and we can get overly aggressive in the sense that you're going to listen to me no matter what. And assertive communication says we are both worthy. Kind of gives equal responsibility there, which I'll talk about more later. You can also prepare responses in advance, especially if you are aware of a pattern of communication that happens, such as when someone is asking for more than you're able to offer, or continually rejecting your requests. You can go through this chart and practice healthy assertive communication, possibly with role play. Okay, with I statements, they serve as a useful strategy for implementing healthy assertive communication as well. They help the speaker to avoid unintentionally placing or feeling blamed, which can lead to obviously an unproductive argument. When someone feels blamed, they're gonna fight, flight, or freeze possibly. So remember, the goal of the conversation in your position of advocacy is to resolve problems and provide support to the person you're advocating for, not to place blame on anybody else, but to bring about resolution. Therefore, you can practice meeting the needs of others while setting healthy boundaries for yourself with the use of I statements, which help to hold both parties accountable for their own responsibilities. As noted in this clip, you can make good eye contact, don't stare, use good, strong posture, keep your back straight, um, avoid ambiguity, clarify what your expectations are. Of course, no swearing, no name calling, and you want to control your voice. Find a happy balance between not speaking too loudly, but also not speaking too quietly. And as in further practice, when using I statements, it's helpful to take the approach of expressing that you are having a problem that you are needing help with, as opposed to an accusatory stance of expressing that the other person is doing something wrong. And in addition, it is important to find a feeling word in your I statement to help you come across as less accusatory, as well as helping the other person to better understand your perspective and how their behavior affects you. So if you look at the screen, the first I statement says, I feel worried. I feel hurt. If you look at that second example where it says, I feel hurt. In that blaming example, it says, you never call me. I guess we just won't talk anymore. Think about what that does to the conversation. It kind of shuts it down, all right? And it hinders any possibility of bringing about that resolution that you're looking for. But when you use that feeling statement and that perspective, I feel hurt when you're going so long without calling, I'm afraid you don't care. What do you think that does in the conversation? So what it seems like is that when you say I feel this and then you explain it, it kind of leaves an opportunity for open dialogue there, and more greater likelihood of bringing out resolution in that situation. Also, a key practice in diffusing behavioral concerns involves practicing reflective listening. This is a practice that I used when I was a case manager, and I found that it worked really well, and so I still use it today. Um, the first step in reflective listening is to do just that, right? Listen. Turn off the urge to begin planning your next statement or begin planning what you have going on the rest of the day. if you are thinking about the next thing that you want to say or the next task you have to complete, then you're not really listening, and the other person's going to see that. The Therapist Aid website says, quote, using a technique called reflection can quickly help you become a better listener. When reflecting, you will repeat back what someone has just said to you in your own words, unquote. For instance, if you look at the example provided on the screen by Therapist Aid, the speaker says, I've been feeling really lousy, really stressed out about work. And then when I go home, I'm still in a bad mood. And the listener response in using reflective listening would say, oh, okay, I see, I hear that work has been so stressful for you that it causes you to feel frustrated all the time. I don't know if you can sense that an investment in that person's statement. In validating the other person's feelings, you are showing the other person that you care about their needs, and consequently, you begin to gain that person's trust, right? So you're not only stopping, focusing, listening, you're reflecting back your interest and an acknowledgement that you're actually hearing that person. And that just helps to de-escalate any behavioral concerns because they feel less like they have to defend themselves or make themselves be heard because now they know that they have been heard. Additional communication tips involve asking open-ended questions to encourage more sharing. Similar to reflective listening, this practice demonstrates that you are invested in the other person's well-being, which helps to diffuse again or prevent unwanted behavior. And it equips you to offer the support that you are intended to give through this advocacy process. So, for instance, you can say, tell me more about that. What did you mean by that? Can you tell me an example of that? Or what did you think about such and such? Furthermore, it helps to ensure that your visual and verbal body language communicates that you are listening. So again, you want to either stand tall, or maybe sit back a little, just communicate that you're here for that person, maybe a little bit vulnerable for the sake of that person's needs. Also, you want to make sure to communicate your perspective. They don't know what you're thinking, without you saying it out loud. So that helps. And then communication is always two-way, right? So you both listen and share. One final concept worth noting is that it helps to consider the perspectives of those that you are advocating for. First of all, addressing the needs of people with disabilities has been a slow process. And I got this from the Social Work Speaks book. They say that only recently have social attitudes, and it's well known, only recently have social attitudes and policy began to recognize that, quote, people with disabilities have the right to fully participate in both in society and in the development and implementation of social policies affecting people with disabilities, unquote. In addition, people with disabilities face social and economic challenges, including barriers related to, quote, employment, income, healthcare, housing, and full participation in their communities. Does that sound familiar? This is a popular topic these days, thankfully. And unfortunately, the media does not give a lot of attention to people with disabilities, but these same type of injustices occur for them as well. And so I want to encourage you to think about how isolating this can be. And when you factor in the stigmatization and the social rejection that are often associated with uh, the disability challenges that people face, these factors can become all that much more compounded. And this affliction carries over to the caregivers as well, right? So, with that said, how can you seek to advocate for people with disabilities while taking these factors into consideration? First of all, it's not helpful to pity such persons, as you likely know, right? Uh, Rather, it's helpful to take the perspective of the person with the disabilities, um, and and maybe cons- view them and advocate for them in a way as they're a person that contributes to society. For instance, if you're on the um, phone with a person or trying to advocate for someone, um, it's important to involve the person with a disability in the process, um, to engage them in self determination, which involves including them in the decision making process, empowering them to make decisions and define the goals in their support plan. Uh, and I just wanted to point out that Brene Brown has a good video on empathy versus sympathy and considering the needs of those that you're advocating for. Uh, these videos often don't work, but I at least wanted to show you this website, what it looks like, so you know you're on the right page when you find it. And here you can see the website location, brenebrown.com/videos, RSA short, empathy. And with that said, I'm going to close. We spoke about boundaries, how we need to meet our needs as well as the needs of others, different forms of communication to include reflective listening, assertive communication, I statements, open-ended questions, body and vocal language, communicating your perspective out loud, and using two-way communication, which involves both listening and sharing. Finally, we spoke about background considerations of those with special needs. In closing, if you have any further questions or concerns, feel free to contact me. I can be reached by cell phone at 210-717-9646. And you can also email our team at TST, which stands for Transition Support Team, at acog.com. Again, that's TST@acog.com. In the meantime, I hope you all keep up the good work out there. Again, let me know if you need anything and have a great day.